Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? If so, here's your sign. I'm Sarah Heater, the host of Big Brave Business, and I also own a podcast production and strategic consultation company called PodFox Media. My team offers a 100% free strategy session that is completely private between you or you and your co-host and one of our industry-leading specialists. We'll tell you everything about podcasting today, the market, what it takes to get started, and all the ways your podcast could look. And there's even time for you to ask any questions you have about podcasting. If that sounds like something that you need to do because starting a podcast has been on your list for months or even years, book your call today. Again, 100% free. launchmyshow.com. That's launchmyshow.com. Welcome to Big Brave Business. This is the podcast where we answer big questions reshaping entrepreneurship. I'm Sarah K. Heater, and this is Season 3. Each week, I'm bringing on my friends, mentors, and some of the best thought leaders I know. We dive into bold, values-driven conversations about leadership, equity, ethics, and building businesses that actually make a difference. Ready to do business better? Let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I have a special episode for you today, a bonus episode, if you will, because this just sort of fell out of the sky into my world. I don't even know how I started following you or like how we got connected, but I just started seeing your stories, and I'm going to tell the person listening who you are in just a second, but I started listening to your stories and I thought, first of all, this really speaks to me and to my like history and my experience and my past, and we'll kind of bond over that. But so really relatable, but also the information was so good. And I was like, this needs to be a Big Brave Business conversation. And luckily you were willing to jump on with me. So Kaili Meyer is a sales and web copywriter specializing in sales psychology and behavior economics. Her background in journalism and psychology, paired with her time spent as a thought capital writer in the finance space, equip her with a unique perspective on consumer behavior and how to drive sales even in times of economic volatility. So welcome to Big Brave Business, Kaili.
Thank you for having me.
What I really loved about what you shared, and the main reason why I was originally like, this should be a Big Brave Business conversation, is not even the timeliness of what you were talking about economic volatility and the uncertainty of where we are right now and kind of the pressure that a lot of small business owners and online business owners are feeling about, you know what it has been for me? I'm just going to like go ahead and lay it out there. It's less that I've been noticing that like buying behavior has changed. And it's more that I keep hearing every other business owner talk about it. And so I think there's kind of like a fear spreading thing going, but it's also a like be prepared, a preparation vigilance thing of there's no question that there's a lot of uncertainty in our political and economic realm right now in the United States, which, and of course the world as well, because we're in like a time of economic recession worldwide. Like lots of people have been feeling inflation worldwide, but for sure, specifically in the United States. And I think like that's probably primarily what we'll focus on unless you want to speak internationally, but
very comfortable here in my home country.
Yes, yeah.
I do think at least like Canadians and people in the UK and Australia, like those are other countries I'm semi-comfortable speaking to just because I have a lot of business friends and clients in those countries. And I think there's a similar feeling happening across all of them. I obviously can't speak to those with as much understanding and lived experience, but I like America is certainly not alone.
Yes. So we all know, it's not a secret, that of course also there's a lot of political chaos and turmoil. So all of that does feel big and brave. But the thing that really spoke to me is the way you showed up in stories, not just talking about it, which was interesting enough as it is, but then you were like, whoa, I got so much response from you. I didn't know you wanted this from me. This isn't actually what I've necessarily been focused on in my like offering and branding, etc. And I didn't realize you wanted this. Did you know I actually have like a lot of experience and expertise in this? I can like actually really speak to this. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I went to school for journalism and psychology. My sophomore year actually of school, I founded publication, a magazine. I had a team of 50. And through that process, so I had to build the team. Actually, it was 50 staff is what we called it. We had to get funding, advertising, everything. Through that, I earned an apprenticeship at Meredith Corporation. So they do like Better Homes and Gardens, Shape Magazine, Eating Well. And so that's when I started learning a lot about like really good storytelling, interviewing, like figuring out what exactly is going on, just getting better at finding the story, getting to the root. And then somehow I ended up as a thought capital writer in the institutional investing space. And these things seem very different and like they don't make sense together. And they don't typically. But what that time in finance taught me, number one, was a lot about the economy. So one of my main jobs was whenever the Federal Reserve would have a new meeting. So the Federal Reserve is who sets like the interest rate. Whenever they would have a new meeting discussing inflation or the interest rate, I was the one who would have to sit and listen to it and then create thought capital to explain to our stakeholders like what does this mean? So if this is going on in China with trade and this is going on in the United States with inflation, what should we be investing in? Like what should change about our strategy? What's going to happen with the other like our other consumers, whether at a personal or an institutional, which just means like a larger group of people level. And that's actually, I left that to open Reveal and become a copywriting studio. So for me, my brain kind of lives at the intersection of psychology, marketing, and finance. And I decided to start talking about it more. Number one, like you were saying, there was this mass spread of fear of like things are slowing down, people aren't buying, nobody's making money. And everyone was still, at least in the online space, living in this bubble. And nobody was discussing the broader happenings in the world and how it's impacting our space, the online business space. It was almost like we couldn't look beyond it. And I think when you're not looking at the quote unquote problem from a wide enough lens, the solutions aren't going to make sense. Like you're just going to try to find solutions that make sense in the online business space when the problem is broader. It's impacting everybody, whether they're in the online business space or not. And it was kind of just frustrating me. And I felt like there was a conversation that needed to happen for people to, number one, just better understand what's going on. Because if you can better understand how these impacts, like the tariffs, policy shifts, wars, the economy in general, are impacting our brains as consumers across the board, you can better understand that if you are experiencing a slow season, it's not necessarily time to rethink your entire offer suite or to tear your business down. It's just a lot of us are going to be having a slower season right now, and we might need to think differently about how we approach our sales and marketing to still get consumers to buy from us. But I think a lot of the conversation that was happening was putting people in a place of, I'm a failure, I should tear it down. The success I had last year, the year before was a fluke. And I just felt that we were doing nobody justice by not kind of discussing what was really going on.
There's so much about this that I say this all the time on the podcast. Sometimes when you podcast, you just really notice what your kind of go-to phrases are. But anyway, there is so much about what you just said that is interesting to me. And one of the things that kind of pops off the quote unquote page, so to speak, in a big, brave business context is that I think we hear terminology, especially for, I'll say, not men. We hear terminology that we generally hear men throw some of these terms around,
Yeah.
right? And we hear men talk about it like they know what they're talking about. And of course, we could get into kind of gender dynamics and say that it's not really that men know more about economics than women do. They just are a lot more confident about pretending that they do and or
Well,
convincing
the
themselves that they do.
right, and money has been a safe and expected topic in male circles from the beginning. I mean, women, it was only the late 60s that women even quote unquote earned the right to have their own bank accounts.
Right.
So there was no reason for women to be discussing politics and finance or discussing finance and the economy because they didn't have access to their own money.
Such an important point because where I was going is like men act like they know more than women do or anyone else does about economics, but the reality is that you don't know either. But
No.
you're actually pointing out a systemic issue and a historical issue that is so much more important than what I was saying, which is that if they do, and the men who do know more, it's because they've had systemic access to financial conversations that other people have been left out of. And that I think that is so important because then for a lot of us, when we start to hear these terms that we don't know a lot about, it makes us uncomfortable. I know
Mhm.
there's a big brave thing here in we're going to start talking about inflation and we're going to start talking about tariffs and we're going to start talking about economics and like, oh my gosh, wait, those are a lot of big words that feel really uncomfortable. I have generations of like money stories, yes, but also of being locked out of those conversations and of that subject matter and honestly being told I shouldn't care about that subject matter, right? Not just me, but
Mhm.
generationally. So
Yeah.
I think that is really, really important. And what's really interesting to me as far as so you started talking about it and you got this like great response from people saying yes, I want to hear this. What is so interesting about this to me is here's my version of that, which is I studied political science and international relations in my
Oh,
undergrad. Those
cool.
were my kind of bachelor's degree focus areas. Actually, it was technically like conflict resolution and political science. I wanted to go into diplomacy. Kind of
Wow.
learned pretty quickly from interning, et cetera, with the State Department that the biggest issue that I was going to have with diplomacy was not the work itself. It was the fact that as the administration changes, you represent the administration and it doesn't really matter what your personal convictions are. Now, if you've been listening
Mm,
to this podcast for any time at all, my personal convictions are like a huge part of how I move through the world. So that was
mm.
really not going to be a great fit. So I never did pursue diplomacy beyond my undergrad. And then my master's is actually in public policy and public administration, and I still teach public policy. And what's so funny is when I started my business, and then I started teaching really at the same time. I felt like kind of a poser putting my bio together for teaching because I was like, I mean, I have education in public policy, but I like run a podcast business. It's not, it doesn't, it's totally separate. Will students be disappointed when they're like, okay, but you're not even working in policy? And what's really funny is the longer I've done this podcast, the longer I've been involved and I've started really participating in NABO, the National Association of Women Business Owners, which was founded by the women initially 50 years ago, the women who petitioned the government for women to be able to own businesses outright in the United States. When they were successful, those women became the National Association of Women Business Owners. So, policy is a really huge element of this organization. And specifically, how does policy affect women in business? And now as I've gotten more involved and the Phoenix chapter found out, like I literally teach public policy, they're like, oh my gosh, we need a public policy director. You're going to do it. Right. So I've just stepped into that role as the very beginning of my term. And it is so funny to me how these different parts of our lives kind of intersect and sort of come back around again of like, hey, this was a really big theme and a really big part of who I am. And although it felt really separate from my current business, the reality is that it's all related to these different facets of me of how I wound up here.
Mhm.
And now I'm embracing this intersection and I feel like you are too.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And I think, at least for my situation, as a sales copywriter, my literal job is to write words that get people to buy things and get people, or at least to take action. And typically, action means join the program, purchase the service, et cetera, et cetera. If I don't understand what's happening for consumers across the board, I can't do my job well. And I think when it comes to owning and running a business, unless even if you are hiring a sales team or people to kind of quote unquote handle sales, one of the most important things, in my opinion, you can learn is how to sell. Because if you can't sell, you don't have a business. You can't be in service of your customers if you don't have customers. And I think for me, I entered the online space in 2019, early 2019, technically end of 18, early 2019. And so I was there before the big like course boom in 2020, 20 to 2023, I would say. And I think what happened was there was so much money being poured into the online space due to, I mean, 2020, what a disaster that was. I think we all thought that was when things were really bad and then they just got worse. But there was so much money being poured in because we saw so many new businesses because people were getting laid off. They had all this extra time. They were stuck in their house. And so service providers, especially if you focus on other business owners, you had so many customers and clients, it was really easy to make a ton of money. And so people started to label themselves as sales coaches, sales educators, just because they had one course take off, they made three, four, $500,000 in a year. They felt that they could teach you how to do that. It was the rinse and repeat method, the be me method. And what we're seeing now is because the consumer landscape has changed, because politically, economically, things have changed, those same sales tactics don't work. But if you don't understand literally how a consumer's brain, a human brain makes a purchasing decision, you can't shift your sales strategies to work with the current consumer market. And so that's ultimately what I wanted to help people see, is that as things are shifting on a global level or even at a local level or even just in your little small corner of the internet, your sales strategies, the literal messaging you're using, the tactics you're using, the things you're selling, the way you're selling has to change too, or else you will think you're the problem. You will think like, I failed. And so it all really comes full circle. I think on the surface, sitting and talking about inflation or tariffs or what's happening in China right now, or like politics might not make sense for a copywriter. It might be like, okay, calm down, like you write websites, but everything I do has to work in the current market. And so to me, it made sense to talk about. I just didn't feel that that's what people were quote unquote expecting from me, or would necessarily, kind of similar to you, the imposter syndrome thing, where it's like, personally, I think somebody else who focuses on this should be stepping up and doing this, but I'm looking around and they're not. And so I guess it's going to be me. But you do have a moment of, am I the right person to do this? Am I the right person to speak on this? I know I have some valid things to say. I know I have a unique perspective. And being an online business owner, I know I can speak directly to our fears, our challenges, the things that we're seeing going on. But I did also have that feeling of like you're like, should somebody who actually did this as a career be the one to teach this? And that's kind of how I felt. I was like, I spent just a couple years in finance. Should somebody else be doing this? But I am glad I did it, because I do think it at least started a conversation where people were able to zoom out and be like, oh, okay, maybe the issue is I've been still acting and selling like it's 2020. And unfortunately, nothing is the same. Like it's completely different. And so it's time to be, and I say this with love, a business owner. It's time to stand 10 toes on the fact that you're a business owner. If you can't and are unwilling to pivot, to learn, to shift, and you're only willing to show up when success is easy, when people are throwing 10K at you to share your space and be in your energy, then maybe it's not the right move for you. Maybe it's not the right space for you. And I also think that's something nobody wants to say, because if we start telling people that, all of a sudden, once again, with love, especially the coaching industry loses people. Like if you tell people, hey, maybe it just isn't the right thing for you. Maybe this isn't the right space for you. Like if you don't love the idea of shifting, pivoting when things get challenging, that's part of being a business owner. That's part of building a sustainable, profitable, reliable business. If you have no interest in doing that, you might have no interest in actually being a business owner. You just have interest in making a lot of money from your house. Valid. Love that. Same, but they're not the same thing.
Um, yes, I just want to like underline that quote forever. And it's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking. I think you really emphasized the thesis statement there really well. And this is exactly what my experience has been, kind of exploring the policy side, and also really truly what this podcast is. And of course, if you have been listening to the show for a while, if this is not your first episode, first of all, thank you. But second of all, then I tend to batch my episodes. So the reason we're releasing this as a special episode is we're recording this in June of 2025. I have actually recorded through like the end of the year already. So I've had a lot of big, brave business conversations that y'all haven't heard yet, but so some of that is still coming, but this I just wanted to release more quickly, and we'll come around really to why. First of all, because I think this is on a lot of people's minds, but But second of all, there is an actual specific like time related offer. So before I get to that, I think that you nailed it, which is most of us who begin this online entrepreneurship journey, and it could be entrepreneurship in general, but especially online, like this creating a business online. We kind of make something up, we sell it on the internet. We can do it from anywhere, but particularly from home. Despite all the like poolside or beachside
Yeah.
selfies,
First
the reality
class.
is
Yeah.
most of us like are home for 4 days straight and we realize we haven't left the house. So, but I think most of us who go into that don't actually, nobody taught us business. We
No.
have usually work experience. So maybe we've learned some things about business through work. We have life experience, right? And I hear so many like kind of influencer chi people talk about, I didn't get an MBA, or I got an MBA from the school of life,
Oh,
or like I didn't need an MBA because like this, like my life experience is so much more valuable. And I am not undercutting the value of learning in the real world. I also love
yes.
education. That's why
Yes.
I'm a degree collector, and I also
No,
like
I love that. No,
teach.
I love that. If you could get
Thank you.
paid to be a student, I've always said I would just
Yes.
collect degrees. Like, please, where do I sign up? Just to learn.
100%, 100% love it. So I do come from a skewed perspective of like, I love education. However, I do think you need both. I think
Yeah.
you need classroom and real world experience. But I think that classroom experience doesn't have to happen in a literal classroom, taking out student
Right.
loans, whatever. And I think that's where this kind of conversation is really important, because it's easy to go, oh, so they don't have MBAs and they make these comments about how an MBA is not valuable. So I don't actually want to learn about business. Just give me the plug and play. What do I need to do in order to make money? And sometimes it really works.
Yes.
And I think even for those of us who aren't just trying to plug and play, we are trying to be maybe bigger and braver about it. We still, to some degree, get lucky. And I don't
Yeah.
mean like we're not talented, but I mean, you step into the right thing in the right place in front of
At
the
the right
right people
time.
and it works. And you're like, I literally said when I started my business and it was more successful financially than any 9 to 5 I had pretty quickly. I literally said, I feel like I unlocked like the cheat code or the secret of like how to survive in capitalism. Like, actually, what you need to do is start an online business. Who knew? Like, that's
I say the
actually
same
what to
thing.
do.
I say, I feel like I'm doing something illegal. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm like, oh my God, is everyone sure that this is fine? Like, I'm a little
Sometimes I
confused.
literally look at my husband and I'm like, I just made this up from the corner of our bedroom. And
People are
like,
paying for my
look at us
brain.
now.
Like, yeah, like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And I think, and this is why it's so important for people like you and me to speak up about the things we do know and not wait for somebody else to do it or push people to somebody else who maybe quote unquote knows more, has more experience or whatever than we do. Because sometimes people just need to hear it from us. I
yeah.
look at you and I look at me and I think, and again, I hope this is not offensive, but I say this like totally with love because I have a huge like friend crush on you, which is I wouldn't look at you or listen to you at face value talking about something superficial and think she probably knows quite a bit about financial investing and economics and inflation and tariffs. And I wouldn't think that. So when
Yeah.
I hear it from you, actually, there's a lot of ways that it's a lot more palatable coming
Yeah.
from you than it is from say the White House. Like
Yeah.
I would rather hear it from you. And I think that's part of the reason why people are responsive to it. So on that note, people were really responsive to it. And at the same
Mhm.
time, you were writing. You're a
Yeah.
writer. So you sat down and you were writing. And so where did the guide, before we even explain what that is, how did
Mhm.
it start and how did it evolve to what it ended up being?
Oh my gosh, funny story. So every single morning I take my dog for a walk around the same park. And I was walking the park and I get what the woo-woo community would probably call downloads. But as an artist, so I also draw and I do other like artistic things. Sometimes I have this I'll see a picture in my head and I cannot continue with my day until I draw it. And that happened. I was walking in the park and I was reading my DMs and I was like, just like thinking about what was going on in the world. And this was back when the tariffs kept getting pushed back, but then this was like the day before, the day after the big tariff push actually was going to go through, and the world was like, oh my God. And I had this feeling of I have to explain to people what's going on. I have to do it. And I had taken more clients than I should have at that time. I was swamped, like very busy building a custom GPT. Like I had way too much going on. And I came home and did nothing for like 12 hours, but write this guide because it started as I wanted it to be like a 2 to 3 page, like very like basic overview. Here's what's going on, you guys. Like, calm down. It's going to be okay. Let me explain some things. And then as I was writing it, I was like, oh my God, no, like this is going to, I don't even know how many pages it ended up being. Let me see here. I mean, I think it's
Like close to 30.
yeah, no, she's not a short document because I just realized I'm somebody who I don't just want to educate, I want to give now what? Like it's you could tune in, you can read the news and you're educated and you're like, okay, I see this is happening. But the connector of like, but what does that have to do with me? That's exactly what I did in finance as a thought capital writer. That's exactly what I did in the magazine industry because I wrote for a brand, a publication that was for people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And so even if you have diabetes, you don't always fully understand what the doctor speak means to you. You're like, great, what do I need to not eat? Okay, can we just simplify it? So, all of my work prior to Reveal and even in Reveal was taking concepts that don't make sense to an average person or experts use language and lingo like the finance world, the legal world, the health world that don't make sense to us. And how can I make it make sense in a way that you can take action as the reader? And so as I was writing this, at first I started with the overview and then I was like, well, this isn't going to be helpful. All it's going to do is overwhelm people more. They're going to go, yeah, I've heard this on the news or I've heard my friends talking about it, but what do you want me to do with this? So then it turned into like, okay, well, what's my lens? My lens is sales psychology. So what strategies are going to work really well right now? If this is going on for consumers, how can I help people? And then it was like, oh, well, I can't just give them a strategy. Like I have to help them understand how to apply it. So it just kept building and building and building until the entire sales survival guide was built. And I realized, oh, wow, I haven't come up for air. And we're about, I think, like 28 pages deep. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is so good because I can see what you just described in the document because we have kind of the whole first section is what's going on in the world. And you have it broken down with like, here's these different topics. And you touch on, of course, tariffs and different like parts of the world and even AI. Like there's kind of explaining like, here's what's happening. And then, yes, you get into the sales psychology stuff and like, how does this impact our brains? And so I'm curious, like, number one, I need to let you know that I was listening to Kaili talk about this on her stories, and I was like, I really like you. And I really like what you're saying. Like, this is so interesting to me. I'm so glad I hit follow whenever I did hit follow. I don't remember necessarily seeing your stories before, but I love this. And I'm so, I don't know how I started following you, but I'm so glad I did. And then you mentioned like, hey, so you guys loved this. So I created this guide and oops, it ended up being 28 pages. Here it is for sale in case you want it. And I was like, immediately, yes, immediately, yes. And I don't know if anybody beat me to it, but I literally clicked the link and bought it as soon as it was available. $47. So it's not like a big investment, but I think honestly, I felt like I invested more time reading through it than in actually the financial investment. But I absolutely was like, yes, I want this. This is something that I want in my back pocket. This is something I want to be able to refer to. And what worked really well for me is I chipped away at it. Like, I was like, okay, I also want to sit and think about the different parts, right? I don't want to just, I tend to speed read. I love to read. So I tend to speed read stuff. When I listen to an audiobook, I'm definitely one of those people that listens to it on like 2 times speed. And then with physical books, like I tend to go through them pretty quickly. So then it's like you're not spending time really marinating on what you read. So I think with this guide, it was sort of like, let me take it in piece by piece and sort of think about how do I feel about this? Like, what does this mean for me? What would I add? What did I learn that's new? How do I feel like this affects me? Those kind of things, right? And then just kept chipping away at it. And then you don't lose access, you bought it. So you can continue to come back for as long as you want. So anyway, all of that to say, I think it's a no-brainer and definitely like there's a link to it, but I'm curious from your area of expertise, and it can be from the guide or just in general, whatever you want. What is one thing that you wish people knew about how the current state of things is impacting like buyer
Consumers.
psychology? Yeah,
Hmm.
consumer psychology.
I think at the most basic level, so I double checked this number right before we got on. We make, as people, about 35,000 decisions a day. And these are small decisions like, should I get out of bed when my alarm goes off or should I snooze again? These are big decisions like, what do I have for lunch? Which is a very big
Oh,
decision. Yeah, huge. But the same brain making those decisions is also the brain making buying decisions. So I'm standing at Target, which deodorant do I want? I am standing at Chipotle, do I want a bowl or burrito? My friend asked me if I want to do a game night, should I prioritize getting to sleep early or do I need to socialize? And when the world looks how the world looks right now, which is there's a lot of uncertainty, you can't turn on the radio, turn on the TV, go in public without hearing people discussing social media, without hearing people discussing, honestly, all the bullshit that's happening. It's scary. It's scary to be anyone in any part of the world right now, right? Nothing is clear. It feels like we've been living in quote unquote unprecedented times since 2020. Like, when do they become precedented? I'm confused. And what that does to the nervous system is create scarcity, create fear, makes it feel unsafe. And when somebody's brain feels unsafe, it is not in a position to make potentially risky investments. And so when you're on social media trying to sell your high ticket service, what used to work was just telling somebody, hey, you can make 100 grand after working with me, taking my course. You can all of a sudden go viral, have like those things are no longer what consumers right now need to hear because they're not even safe, quote unquote, safe enough to feel like that would be worth it. Right now, they need to know that whatever you're offering can help them now, that will work for them now, can help solve a current problem that they have. And so, what I wish people understood is that the same brain navigating the turmoil of the world is the same brain trying to decide if they want to buy from you. And without considering that, the messaging you're going to use when you try to sell is not going to appease that brain or make that brain safe. Our job as businesses right now is to make a consumer's brain feel a little bit more safe and secure in the decision to work with us. And that takes a lot of nurturing and education. I actually was having a 60-minute intensive with somebody yesterday, and we were talking about why people weren't buying from her, and we were talking about how time strapped she is. And I was giving her some ways to humanize the nurture process. And she was saying, I physically don't have time to do that. I want it to be easy. And I paused and I said, I hear you. We are no longer right now in a position where all of the things that made business easy in 2020 to 2023, just setting up many chat automations and a real quick sequence and just sending somebody from a freebie to a $17 resource to a 97 to a 1,997. Like, it isn't that easy anymore. You might need to surprise and delight, show up as a human, actually have a conversation, put in that effort, de-optimize, be slightly less efficient. We might need to be willing to do that right now. And that's kind of what I meant at the beginning when I was saying, if that sounds like oh, I'm not doing that, that is what it means to be a business owner who can make it through these times. This is very similar to the '08 crash, where it was like a lot of people came out of 2008 with zero money, an extensive amount of debt, no longer owning their home. They had to foreclose. But a lot of people came out, so many millionaires were made in that because some people adapted and they made decisions, especially with their investments and with their money and their spending, that made sense for that time. And they were able to come out the other side, maybe not always better, but at least survive it. And we as business owners, a lot of us are in that right now. And you have to be willing to maybe do a few things that a couple of years ago you wouldn't have had to do to see success. But if you don't want to do that, I guess my question would be, how badly do you want your business? How badly do you want to serve the people you're serving? Because now is a time to show up and serve them.
Okay, so one of the things that you kind of started off there talking about is our messaging should make people safe. And I want to take that and also go so far as to say your offer
Mhm.
should be something like not just the way you sell it, right? Like, well, how do I make people believe that this is something that they need or something that they want right now, even though they feel unsafe? It is deeper than that because it's also how does your offer, like actually asking the question, who is this right for right now? And there
Mhm.
are people that maybe right now, this isn't the right investment to make right now. Then you can also ask the question of if that's a demographic you really want to serve,
Mhm.
then and your existing offer, your primary offer is not the best thing for them to make an investment in right now. What other offer could you create? And this is something else that you have done recently where you
Mhm.
came out with your copy bestie
Mhm.
custom GPT.
Mhm.
So yes, people can work with you, but also there is another version of getting essentially like an opportunity to tap into your brain and your strategy and your core values and the way you do things and make a smaller investment. Americans, I believe you said this in your story. American paraphrasing. Americans are going to spend money during this
Mhm.
time. They're going to spend money, but they're going to choose to spend money either A on dopamine hits that help them get through what's going on, or B, to your point about things that feel like a secure, solid investment for what they're trying to achieve right now in their lives. So they're going to spend money. You can
Mhm.
be offering something that makes sense for them to spend money on, or you can go out of business. Like those
Mhm.
are kind of, but if you are one of those people who can adapt and can, if your offer already does offer this, then great. Or if the demographic, because this is another thing that I've kind of been sort of looking at in my business is like maybe some of the businesses that I work in podcasting, we work with all kinds of businesses, but primarily businesses, right? And so there are industries that we have worked with in the past that maybe this is not the best time for that industry. And there are industries that we're working with right now. Like we have a podcast about AI that came out earlier this year. We have a podcast about data center construction and
Mhm.
that just came out like a couple weeks ago. So these industries are getting bigger, not smaller. So then maybe we lean in on those industries as our ideal demographic, right? So there's lots of ways that you can adapt, and the people who do adapt will still have business success. That not every business is going under.
No. Yeah. That is, and I think that that's something that's difficult to talk about in the online space too, especially in socials, is I'll never forget last year, so 2024, we also saw a huge narrative of people being like, worst year ever, worst year ever, worst year ever. And I had my best year ever to date last year. And so there is also something to be said for not everybody is experiencing the same thing right now. A lot of people are having an incredible year. A lot
Yeah.
of people are having a horrible year. A lot of my clients are going back and getting 9 to 5s on top of their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just what you're doing now. It's what did you do the years leading up to this? Were you investing in like sustainable marketing that was SEO? I have a client who she went ham on her SEO. She's a photographer and she was getting 50 to 80 inquiries a month, which is crazy. I don't even know how I would field that many inquiries. Apparently, my SEO needs deep help. But she now is quote unquote down to 20 to 30 inquiries a month. And this is like a down year for her, but it looks different than everybody else's down year where they're down to 1 to 5 inquiries a month because of the work she put in before. Would it be really easy to look at what she's doing and be like, see, like somehow I'm doing something wrong? No, maybe, but also maybe decisions she made at a different point in time prepared her to be in a different position now. And I think that's another piece of the story that a lot of people aren't talking about or aren't considering is now is also a really great time to be thinking about the future. Like if things are slow, what I always tell people is it's really easy to go through a slow season and just kind of hermit and feel bad for yourself and be upset. But instead, just recognize that everything is cyclical. The economy is, business is, consumer behavior is. So things will come back around. If you find a way to be creative and make it through this time period, but also consider how to set yourself up to not be in a down period the next time something like this happens, because this won't be our last time that something like this happens. Hopefully, you'll be somebody who, when everybody else is talking about how slow business is, you can be like, I don't know, I'm not experiencing that. Like things are actually pretty good, which is another piece of why I created the guide, because it's like if we all talk about learning from history and using history to prepare us for the future, but then for whatever reason as business owners, we kind of forget about it and we don't apply that. So this is an opportunity to learn through current day that will one day be history. And so that when future day hits, you're not in the same place you are right now.
I could talk to you all day, and there are other questions I wanted to ask you and dig into with you, and we did not have time. So you're just going to have to come back. But
Yay.
two things. Number one, just as a reminder, all of Kaili's info and frankly mine, in case you have or not connect with me, is in the description in the show notes. Like, please connect with us, hang out with us. These are the kind of conversations we like to have. So if you like them too, which hopefully you do if you made it this far in the episode, then come and connect with us on social media or whatever, email lists, those kind of things, because these are the conversations that we're having. And then in addition to that, as a reminder, also, there is a link in the description and the show notes for the guide that we were talking about that Kaili put together about what's going on right now and how does that affect your sales survival guide, right? That's, I think, officially what you called it, the sales survival
Yes.
guide, but it is what's going on right now and how does that affect consumer psychology. So that link will be in the description as well. But I like to end all of these conversations with the same question. It can be work related, but it does not
Okay.
have to be.
Oh no.
So, what is something that is making you happy right now?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I kind of blew up my life at the beginning of the year. Blew up a long-term relationship, got my own house, and I have been leaning into, I was very much like a neutral interiors girl for a long time, except for my office. As you can see, I'm a big art girl. And I've been leaning into funky decor, like anthropology dining sets. And I have been having a bit of a love affair. Like I have pasta bowls that like some have oranges across them, strawberries, tomatoes. They're like bright colors. I have bright colored placemats. It's been making me happy to curate a home that is all mine and it just screams joy. I think when you share space with a man, unfortunately, just kidding, we love men. You want the space to be good for both of you. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, and as the woman, usually that means like kind of toning things back or keeping some of the funk into your own spaces or the color, the pink, God forbid pink. And I did that for a really long time. And now I have a home that I come home to, and it feels like the majority of the rooms are curated to make me happy and feel like an expression of me. Something, whenever somebody has been in my home and then goes to my website, they always say, like, your website feels like your dining room.
Oh,
And that actually was the instruction to my designer last year when I rebranded. I said, I want people to feel like my website is them stepping into my literal home and I'm hosting them. And so that's how we picked my new color palette. That's how we picked the vibe. And so I've been getting more and more comments because I'm that crazy person who, when a client is like in Phoenix, if I've never met them, I'm like, come over, share my space, come into my house, stranger. And so I've been getting more and more people who are able to see the through line there. And that makes me really happy.
I love that. It's so funny because I definitely relate to, I guess, like linking your brand into the things that you do. And sometimes I think like, ooh, is this just like kind of the definition of capitalism? Like my work brand has become like my personality. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like, my company's called Podfox, so our logo is a fox. And like if I see stuff that's orange, and I always liked the color orange, like that was one of the colors that I loved, but it has become like my cornerstone, like go to. If I get to pick a color of something, I'm gonna pick orange, not a car,
Yeah.
but
Not a car, to be
yet.
clear.
Yet. But I Kindle cases and like I and also foxes themselves. Like I was not particularly like I didn't have an issue with foxes, but I wasn't like a fox lover or anything.
Hmm.
I just liked the way it sounded with like pod fox. I
Yeah.
don't think there's like cultural,
Deeper meaning.
yeah, like anything bad there. And I liked the idea of having a fox to play with in the branding,
Mhm.
or an animal, but I thought a fox worked really well for that. So anyways, there's a lot of reasons, but I have now started, like, when I see anything with a fox on it, I'm like, yes. So it is kind of funny how that happens, where like you end up, and you went in the other direction kind of like, I want my brand to feel like what already
Home.
feels like me, right?
Hmm.
And then I'm kind of going the other way, where I'm like, I created this brand and then I'm like, how can I use it everywhere? So anyway, okay, for me, what's making me happy right now, I am in a bit of a slower season as far as meetings, which is really nice. My meeting calendar is like so much lighter in the summer. I did that last year, loved it, and decided this is my pattern that I'm going to do. I think that for
Love.
me, it's really helpful with like a creative refresh, because you start off the year so gung ho of like, I'm raring and ready to go. And then you kind of sprint through the spring. Like, and so by the time we get to summer, it's like, okay, I'm sort of tired. Also, all of the regular kind of schedules are disrupted. My
Hmm.
kids are grown, so that part of it isn't necessarily so much, but my clients definitely are affected that way, right? And so like, and my friends and whatever. And so like all the pattern disruptions of summer, everyone's traveling. And then yes, also that too. I'm like, I was thinking about when you said 35,000 decisions a day, and I have been trying to book quite a bit of travel for the summer. And it's like I'm reaching this fatigue point, and I know it's related exactly to what you're saying, where it's like I'm making so many micro decisions, even in the moment of like, well, what if I switch this date to this date? Well, what if I book it this way to this way? What if I use this membership or this travel card instead? Like, I'm checking all the different ways for like, how can I optimize this? That then by the time it's time to like, okay, just hit book, I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't do
Exhausted.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. I've made so many decisions up to that point. I'm tapped out. So, anyways, but I am excited. I have some really fun travel things we're trying to accomplish this summer. Some of them will definitely happen. Some of them might change and shift, but I hope not. So, anyways, I'm looking forward to it. I am embracing it. I'm definitely like, yeah, I'm in summer mode. So that's making me happy.
I love that. Well, summer in Phoenix doesn't particularly make me
Well,
happy,
that's why
but
the travel is important
yes, what
out
you're
of Phoenix.
describing sounds wonderful.
Yes. I think, yeah, it's so funny because as we've been recording, right, batching, so many people have said what makes them happy is like, it's getting warmer. And I'm like, you don't live in Phoenix.
Oh my gosh,
We feel
no.
the
Oh,
opposite. This is our depressing season.
yeah, no, I know. I am inside. I walked Sedona, that's my dog, a little bit later today, and I was like, "Oh my God, it was 92 degrees." What? By like 8 a.m.
Yeah.
The other night on Monday, it's Wednesday. On Monday night, I play in an adult soccer league, and I played in 108-degree weather,
No.
which should be illegal. There has to be laws against that.
Yeah.
I
I'm
recognize I'm
gonna
an adult
pass.
making her own decisions, but that's illegal. Who let me do that?
Well, this has been honestly so much fun. And like I said, I could talk to you all day. So I feel like we're friends now. And
Yes.
also, you're going to have to come back for sure on Big Brave Business. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for putting the guide together, also. Because
Um,
speaking of, and for just talking about it, for showing up and talking about it, speaking of like, who am I? Like, thank God you did. I'm so, so happy
oh.
that you did and that you are. And so I hope you continue to. And just know you have like your number one fan over here. And
Oh, well, thank you so much.
to you listening, thank you for being here as well. And we will see you right here next week.